Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And we've just been to see The End of Oak Street. Sci-fi survival film, adventure. The trailers suggested this is about dinosaurs invading a nice suburban street. Didn't really know anything more than that. That is pretty much what's going on. It's written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, who I know from It Follows, which was his kind of breakout film.
I know him from Under the Silver Lake as well.
Which followed It Follows, as it were. I didn't like It Follows very much. I thought it was self-knowingly filmmakery.
Yes.
The way that it used the camera, the way the camera followed, and the way that long takes were used, and there was a real conspicuous element to how the camera was used. And I also found it extremely misogynist, and essentially pretty overpraised. But people love it.
Yeah.
And he has a reputation from it. And here, this is a much bigger film. I don't know how big Under the Silver Lake was, but this costs something like $85 million.
It starred Andrew Garfield as, I think, the stoner who sees something and then kind of follows this disappeared women and tries to resolve the clues.
Right.
So it's like a kind of a noir, mystery, hippie-ish vibe.
Yeah, that's an $8 million budget. So it's operating on 10 times that now in a big monster movie.
Though, actually, interestingly, I also thought, isn't it interesting that you could get this type of dinosaur movie for only 90 odd million, right? Because the budget is between 85 and 95 or something.
Something like that, yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of film that, when Spielberg made it would have cost 250 million now, right? It would have been the price of Spider-Man or...
Yeah. One thing that gets cheaper over the years is computer-generated imagery.
Sure. And here
which I think
it's
is
not...
good here.
Well, I don't think it's that good.
It's all right. I mean, it's not amazing, but I think for the most part it really works. And the film does not skimp on dinosaurs. The lesson people learned from Jaws was don't show the monster for or show it in bits and pieces, but keep it away because the anticipation and the hiding and the effects of the monster before you see it build up the tension and the scares. Here, there's an element of that, and then we go hell for leather on dinosaurs are filling the frame, and they're all over the shop. For the most part, I thought things actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't. So, I mean, I thought it looked good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Because the point here is how it scares you. And I thought it was really cleverly done. Right?
Okay.
Like, that whole episode with the snake and and it surprises you and so on. But then you look at the snake, and actually it could be like a plastic tube slithering around, right? Like the skin had very little texture. There was no sliminess or scaling or you could have spent a lot more money and gotten a much better snake, right? But it did the job in terms of scary.
I do see what you're saying, but I actually really like the way that part in particular. I really like the way that the snake looked.
Okay.
It really worked for me. It didn't have to be slimy in order to get across what it was doing. It felt like it fitted in the scene. I wasn't thinking like there's a CG element that's out of place, which you sometimes do.
Well, I don't think it was a CGI element that was out of place. But with better CGI, you find it, more realistic. And also maybe each monster is given a personality or, the level of detail in the skin and the movement. And, so I think this was fair. Yeah, it did the job, but it wasn't excellent.
Yeah. Well, I think that can be said for the film as a whole, really.
Yes.
So the idea here, which I didn't get from the trailer, is that this town, which is this suburb, really, you see a shot of it of a kind of a couple of hundred houses, has somehow been transported back into the prehistoric era. I thought it was dinosaurs coming into the present from the trailer, but no, it turns out it's the other way around. As the central family realises, so the central family is Ewan McGregor as a husband who is a bit of a drip, a bit of a loser. He's lost his job. He hasn't told his family. He's drinking a bit. His wife is a kind of aspiring novelist who's been writing down in novel form all of the dissatisfactions with her family, and they're kind of on a brink of divorce. That's Anne Hathaway. And two kids, Maisie Stella and Christian Convery. Maisie Stella's character is kind of a science geek, and these are like teenage kids. Science geek. She, right at the start, we talk about Carl Sagan. She says, I want to go to Cornell because that's where Carl Sagan teaches. So immediately that places you somewhere in the past because Carl Sagan has been dead for many years. Turns out it's confirmed at the end of the film we're in 1982. It's clearly the 80s.
Yes.
And the younger son is sort of a bit bullied, but he has his group of mates, like in Stephen King and in Stranger Things. It's like they're all riding around on bikes, and one of them's fat and one of them's black.
It's like Goonies or something.
Yeah, exactly. And he loves his dog. And there's, for the first 20 minutes or whatever, that's the film setting all this up. It is going for all of those tropes very strongly. I wondered to what extent it was doing so knowingly, or how much it was just replaying them.
I think it's quite knowing.
It is quite knowing.
Yeah.
The name that struck me when the film began was J.J. Abrams, or Bad Robot is the production company. That's his production company.
Yes.
And one thing that I know of J.J. Abrams is he loves this era. He loves Spielberg and wants to be Spielberg.
This is a very Spielberg-y film.
And so before I knew, because only at the end did I realise he wasn't the director, before I knew that he wasn't the director, I was thinking, this is J.J. Abrams all over. And in some ways it still is. We have a bit of Jurassic Park, obviously, but it's not just in there are dinosaurs around, but it's also in, the big pile of poo at the start is a very obvious nod. We have kind of rustlings going on behind, leaves, but there's also a lot of like E.T. Close Encounters, when all this stuff happens, the supernatural event happens, we don't know what it is. It's shown to us through lights coming through windows, shaking. It's pure Close Encounters, the dog going crazy and running off. So it's building on and aping and kind of copying a lot of what we identify with Spielberg's blockbusters.
Yes.
I don't really love that. I don't love that it's doing that, but it does nonetheless work.
Yeah, it's very derivative.
Yeah.
But it works, And just a couple of things, really, that I want to mention before I forget. I love Anne Hathaway in this. Actually, there was a period where I really loved her. We had the Princess Diaries and so on. And then, I think around the time of Les Mis, I kind of distanced myself a little. She was so actressy and so on. And now this year I've come to love her again. Right?
Yeah.
Maybe because she's had The Devil Wears Prada, she's had The Odyssey, and then she's had this. And really she's like a real star presence. And even though she's not particularly brilliant in this, she really held my attention in a way that Ewan McGregor, whom I normally love, did not. I think it's his most charmless performance. Yeah, and then you think, is it meant to be this way? He is meant to be playing a kind of, a passive guy who's going through a difficult time and, what he's wearing and how he's walking and so on. But even so, I think this is the performance where, you might as well have cast anyone else, because I don't think he brings anything to it, really.
I was thinking about this before we saw it, and I thought, has he ever actually been good? In my opinion.
Oh, yes.
I don't think he has.
I think he has.
I think every film, even going back to Trainspotting, which was a great film, I can imagine someone else in his role. I think, he's handsome.
Oh, he's never been that handsome. But I think he's always been extremely charismatic.
Yeah.
And very sexy and alive. And
But I've never thought he was good.
Oh my God! There's this film where he and Renee Zellweger are in a kind of a Doris Day, Rock Hudson type of film, but it's a musical also, and he's absolutely brilliant. He's acting in the style of that period, right? It's fantastic. Yeah.
If you say so.
Down with Love, 2003. Anyway,
I don't like him in this. As you say, he's charisma free, and part of that is the character, but something else should be on offer as well. Every line of dialogue he has feels like it's been loops. Like ADR. His dialogue somehow seems to match up with him less than the dinosaurs do with the scenes they're in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When you're talking about like the CGI being a little bit ropey, well, his dialogue, whether they were like, you've got to redo everything because your accent is not sticking, and it still doesn't.
No.
I don't know. But
he's not helped by the director, though. That scene where the dinosaurs are fucking, and she wants to take a picture and he's got the hammer. I mean, think of how many ways that could have been photographed to make him look good, and the film does not.
Yeah. So, spoilers. I was really impressed that the film killed him, and then I was not impressed when it brought him back. I thought, there you go, no one's allowed to fucking die in films. Because I took a long time before I got into the film. I was pretty cynical about it for a long time. I was thinking, well, this is just Stranger Things. This is this 80s nostalgia. I think that's the worst decade. I don't care about any of this. Why does it have to be set in the 80s? Why can't it be set in the modern day? Nothing is specific enough to require that, I think.
I think it is. The lack of internet and mobile phones is really important.
But they aren't going to have internet and mobile phones anyway once they're in the past. It's irrelevant. You know, they could just not be able to use their phone. I think it's an irrelevance.
The thing about the past, I'm also unsure of.
Okay.
Because, you know, there's the coda at the end of the film where, the whole thing happens again, and then the police go in and kill off all the dinosaurs, remember? Yeah.
So I was unclear at the end, but
so I think it's the past coming into the present. Yeah.
Well, I thought the film was fairly clear that it was the present being removed to the past, or the past and present swapping, because when we see the town at the end, it swaps places with.
Maybe the swapping. But is the bit.
I think kind of plot consistency is one of the film's issues, which for the most part I really, really forgive, because actually it didn't matter to me that much. So, when we see the kind of the spherical portal that takes you between the past and the present, one question in any film would be, well, what's going on? How's it working? Is it a science experiment gone wrong? Well, never answered. And I don't need it to be. I'm fine with it just happening. And
it said something about light or whatever, but, it's like you say, it's not important.
The young girl who's into science says, Carl Sagan, blah, 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 I think these are time portals and wormholes. And you go, fine. Like, it doesn't answer where the wormholes are coming from. Doesn't need to. The film is not offering an explanation, and I don't need it to. It's just happening.
Yeah.
Fine with that. But there are things about plot consistency that I think are its issue. And if you wanted to take them seriously, you could. Doesn't bother me. Doesn't bother me. That's not the kind of thing I'm going to get bothered about by this film, because the story did start to move me along. So when I got in tune with the film, and when I saw what it was, the kind of film it was, and what it was going for, was when the dinosaurs first start showing up and you realise what's going on. And you've had some of that reasonably atmospheric, like bins shaking, a shadow here, like what's going, and the dinosaur presence starts to make itself known. And then someone just gets eaten. A dinosaur comes in from the edge of frame, bites a woman on the head, and you go, oh, fuck. And there's laughter, and I laughed, the audience liked it. And I'm going, okay, so this is not quite what I thought it would be. This is a little bit funnier. It's a little bit bolder. You get to the point where Ewan McGregor is killed. So they have a fight with a T-Rex, and it's playing that...
He sacrifices himself.
Yeah, but he doesn't mean to,
for his
but
family.
He does. So
no, he does, because... the whole thing begins by him directing attention away.
Yes, but he's hoping not to die.
Oh, of course.
So yeah, but it's basically doing the scene in Jurassic Park where the T-Rex chases them, but it's adapting it in an interesting way. So you've got the whole family are kind of going in 4 different directions, and you see them draw the T-Rex's attention between them. Whereas in Jurassic Park, it's you do the flare, draw the attention away from the kids, and then you're driving off, dragging it with you. Here, it's doing something a little bit different, and I liked it. So, the dad takes the attention away, and then the mum takes the attention away, then the dad comes back and hits the dinosaur in the face, and you go, no way did he take that fucking thing down in one go. It was quite funny and quite silly. And then the dinosaur comes back and just eats him. And I thought, wow, I did not see that coming. Because what you're expecting is the reunion of the family at the end. They're not going to break up. Everything will be okay. And I thought, wow, we're not going to get that. We're going to get something else. And then, of course, it goes back in time and allows them to bring him back. And it felt like such a cop-out.
I didn't think that was a cop-out because, the film's themes needed resolution. Yeah. So you need to bring him back, in order for her to have learned something and to change and to appreciate and to bring the family back together. Otherwise, it would have ended on a tragic note. Yeah, but those things you were mentioning, her novel about her desperation to leave, and that needed a conclusion. Now, that said, to me, the film looks ugly. As we said, Ewan McGregor is terrible. It's really badly plotted, right? So at the end, when all the strands are brought back together, it feels really heavy and really clunky. And yet, I still had a really good time.
I mean, one of those things at the end, in terms of plot. This is where I was the film seemed a bit hasty and not eager to actually develop anything. But like I said, I forgive most of it. But you end up with these news beats where they're going, 2 weeks ago, the town was saved by this woman and her family, ringing around everyone to get them out. And going, well, what we saw was her ringing just her husband to get him out of the town before it would go back in time again, because we're in this kind of loop. And so then I'm going, so does this keep happening? Are they somehow saving everyone one by one? Again, not explained. Is that what they did? And then right at the end, we see that the young black girl who lost her parents, who they take with them, seems to have a copy. So because the dad that they save is a copy of the one that they lost from the timeline, whatever. So so they're leaving their copies of themselves there to go back in time. They're just bringing the dad back, but maybe that's not the case with the girl. She saved herself and her parents, and now she's got an identical twin. I don't know.
I think that is kind of explained. She goes off to get her parents, right?
Yeah, but she brings back herself as well.
Yeah.
There are two of them at the end. Is that the only one who there's a copy of?
I didn't see two.
I thought I did. That's in that last shot. Two. She's sort of playing with herself.
It didn't register that way for me. But anyway, my point is that it's really clunky.
Yeah.
And actually, I have a point of reference because, this morning I was seeing Kurosawa's Stray Dogs, and it's so beautiful, and every image has a concept behind it, and it's kind of original, and also it's emotive, it's expressive, right? It's just like so beautiful. There's nothing in this film that remotely approaches anything like that. No. Everything feels pedestrian. Right, I hated the color. Actually, I hated the look of the film. Yeah, it was like this washed out suburbia. I hated the clothes. Right, So, hate is too strong a word, but I just didn't like it. Right, and yet the film still worked on me. And I had a good time.
I was paying attention to the look because I was thinking we didn't see this in the IMAX digital. We saw this on regular screen, and I thought the projection was decent. We complained about the projection in one of Cineworld's regular screens recently, but today I thought the projection was fine and didn't cause any problems. And I was thinking, there was one or two shots, there was a segment in particular, which I thought this is really washed out. They're sat inside the house. It's obviously meant to be kind of dusk or night time, and so there's no real light. They haven't got any electricity. There's a little bit of like moonlight or whatever, but it doesn't look, you can still look beautiful and expressive with that, and it just had this dull, washed out thing. And I thought, is that the look of this film? And I realised it's not, because when the bright lights, the supernatural event is happening, that's really bright and vibrant on the screen we watched it on. It's shining in through the windows, really bright. There's high contrast. Most of the film is daytime stuff, so we're not relying on a dull down image at night for creepy things to happen. This is in the daytime. Dinosaurs coming in the daytime, and the thing is bright. It is colourful. I think it's working. So the kind of visual design had its moments where it was dull like that, but actually I thought this isn't a problem with the film. This is kind of working for me.
It wasn't working for me.
In other words, a little brighter than I expected it to. I think a film like this very often depends on trying to get dullness out of it. But actually, the thing is, it's a film that if I were watching this as a kid, I might have really liked. This is for kids who are 8 to 12 years old. I would have been watching this on TV or whatever at that age, and it would have been a complete trifle. Parents wouldn't have known what it was and wouldn't have mattered. But to kids, this is the kind of thing. It's about it's about a family and some young kids who are having a dinosaur adventure, and in those terms, it's a decent example of what that kind of film is. It doesn't go to places you don't really expect.
Well,
for the most part.
It's very TV-ish.
Yeah.
And everything, because I was thinking, for example, of the casting. Right, and it seems so inconsistent. Because, for example, I thought the young boy was very good. I thought the sister, why did she get cast? Right, she wasn't beautiful. She wasn't charismatic. Like, she wasn't very good, at acting. Like, and also the young girl who goes to private school. Like, you could think of so many people who are better, acting that particular role. Again, with the neighbor. There were a whole bunch of laughs there that kind of the actor really didn't get,
In a way, the performances and the casting are one of the things that remind me of the kind of film I'm talking about, because they are kind of low rent. I don't think any of the performances are really any good. No. I think Anne Hathaway does have her moments. When she's
Anne Hathaway, I think, is such a star.
When
really,
she's being like scared by dinosaurs, or she's reacting to the death of her husband. She really does have her moments, but for the most part, it didn't work. The performances on the whole didn't work for me. But those films that I'm referring to that I would have watched as a kid, in a lot of respects, weren't that good. They were low rent. They were. This is not cheap, but it connotes some of that. They weren't that clever, but they were communicating certain things or delivering certain things. And what this is delivering is a lot of dinosaurs, some fun action, a few surprises. It's kind of there's a real functionality to what it's delivering. I mean, in a way, it also feels quite demeaning to think of it this way, because I'm basically thinking of it as like content. We have an audience in mind and we have a target to hit, and these are the things that will go into this film that will deliver to that audience and deliver us that audience. And it does that. It's product. I think it's sort of fine.
I think there are a few things that I want to give it credit for, actually. So I was really tense and scared during the whole snake in the house bit.
Despite the fact the snake didn't impress you.
Despite the fact that the snake didn't impress me. There was that moment where one of the dinosaurs is going too tight next to the window and you could see the hairs. Yeah,
yes,
that was a lovely moment. The scare bits where at the beginning where the birds just eat people, pick them off. Yeah, which were both like scary and funny, right? I think there were those things that I think the film really succeeded at, really, that worked on me.
Yeah.
Right? That kind of made me jump out of my seat.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not nothing.
I mean, I found it hard to gauge what your reaction was, because I didn't seem to see much, whereas Jen was reacting a lot to, and she was scared. Because I was sitting there going, I see what it's doing. It's saying that's scary, sort of fine. But Jen was, like gripping my hand and jumping at bits, and I was like, okay, so this is really working then.
It worked on me as well.
So that's fair enough, and I don't take it away. Like that is working, and I do think it's effective. It has a lot of, as you say, it's extremely derivative in the way it's doing it for the most part, but it is working. When it comes to the camera work, I mentioned David Robert Mitchell, his camera in It Follows being very film schooly kind of thing. There's definitely some of that going on here as well. I think a lot of self-conscious aping of a style. So there's a lot of split diopter with a character in the foreground and character in the background, and you can see where the focus is blurry in the middle because the front and back have to be focused. And that's a film school shot. It's like it's like a film nerd thing you notice.
It's a Brian De Palma shot.
Yeah, and it used to just be the style. So like. And it's completely legitimate to use it, but it is also very identifiable of an era of cinema. This is 70s, 80s looking stuff.
Yes.
There's also the use of zooms, which you really rarely see these days. And you used to get a lot of zooms in the 70s in particular. And here, they are used fairly regularly, at least early on. And I think purposefully, I actually like them. So they are delivering a style. You notice that the camera is starting off here on a camera who's close to the lens and moving into the background and reframing and zooming in on the character who's looking at them through the window, something like that. But I thought there is purpose to each of these shots. There's a reason that it is moving from here to there, and it's doing so in a way that allows it to ape this style that is evocative of a previous era. Christopher Nolan recently said something about film critics that has had a bit of response, which is a problem that he has with film criticism, is that just because you can notice something that the film is doing doesn't mean that it's wrong for it to be doing it or bad that it does it. There are genres where things have a plot that has a structure that you always expect because it's the genre. There are camera shots like the ones I'm talking about which have their purpose. Just the fact that you notice it doesn't mean that it's bad. Like not everything has to be a brand new idea. These things have purpose, and so that's where I'm kind of landing with this. Like, I noticed what it was doing, and then I noticed it and find it very self-conscious. There's a certain degree of issue with that for me, but actually when I step back I think this is just working. It's making use of these tools that exist in cinema, and some exist in a cinema of a previous era and we don't see very much anymore, but it doesn't mean it's wrong to be doing them. I like it.
Well, what I don't like about the film So again, to refer to Kurosawa in Stray Dogs or other of his modern films, not the samurai spectacles, is that the films are not only beautiful to look at and original, and with these images that do all of these kinds of things, but they also offer a kind of a complex and sophisticated view of society and of people, right? Which again, this film to me seems to evoke the worst of American culture at the moment.
Yeah.
It's a film in which this family is obsessed with protecting its own desires, ultimately with protecting themselves, but find it almost impossible to go beyond that. So at the end, when the old lady and the librarian and so on are brought back into the picture, you feel it's almost like an afterthought, right? Like kind of, why does this family under siege not immediately go search other families? And kind of, you often see, for example, this family in the car safe while another family is being hunted down by a Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? Yeah. So the sense of being like an isolated unit of the individual, of not really getting a view of society, this kind of rampant individualism that you see in so many American films, which is so ugly, really, because it is just about you, right? Is something that this so-called family film evokes very powerfully, and that it tries to disavow because it is ultimately about the family, right? Yeah.
So I know what you mean, and I was thinking to myself, where are the other people in this? This is a whole town that is being transported back. We see, like I say, that overhead shot that shows us there are many roads and many houses here. So where are all these other people? Should they not all be in the streets? Or what are they doing? And as you say, you do see other people a little bit. You don't get a sense of crowds of people, who are trying to escape or go through all this. Like, whenever they're on the road, it's basically just them on the road, and you might see, as you say, you drive past someone who is getting their head bitten off. Whenever you see another person being attacked, which you do in these isolated incidences, the family themselves are also under threat. They're trying to escape. I never thought to myself, well, why aren't they stopping to help them? Because everyone is under threat at the same time, and we have to look after ourselves, and we can't help them. But there are also plenty of times when they've boarded up the house, they're staying in, they're not under threat, and there is no consideration of this must be happening to everyone. What are we going to do? Can we do something as a neighbourhood?
They didn't even knock on their neighbour's door. Say,
So
how are you? Right?
So that's where I do agree with you that it is purely insular. It's about the family unit and no one else. When they save the young girl who's lost her parents, it's because the kids happen to have wound up with her, and they come back. So the kids come back with her, and the parents are like, well, of course we take her in. But
it's
but
a
that's
film
not that they haven't gone looking to help people.
It's a film in which society doesn't exist. I mean, had this film been made at any other time, there would have been some consultation with the policeman, with the fireman, with the church, with the schools, right? Like, each of which offer kind of different facilities, different potentialities of escape or defense or nothing.
Yeah. All we see is, and this is partly because I think of the way American suburbia is set up, is all we have are houses and garages. Like the kind of the facilities, like the shop, the church, the stuff. They maybe didn't even come with, because suburbia, it just kind of is structured that way, that those things are elsewhere. You need to get in a car to go to them.
That could be, but even suburbia would have a school.
Well, yeah, and also, the fact that they're not there, well, they could have been there. Like, you could have written them into the film.
Written them in, exactly.
So, I'm not saying that's like an excuse. It's just when that context was provided to, I think this is just houses. That's why I didn't think of any of that. But you're right. Like, that could be in the film. It's just not.
Yeah, I found it odd and trite. So it's one of those films that in some ways seems woke, in the best sense of the word, right? So you have Anne Hathaway, probably because she's the biggest star in the film, who, develops these sisterly bonds with all these old ladies, Again, the librarian, the editor, right? So that's good, on the one hand. Yeah. On the other hand, there's nothing kind of beyond that, right? And actually, now that you remind me, yeah, there is a library. There's a librarian. There's a library. Right? So, yeah, there are institutions in this place. Yeah, and I think kind of, in most places, a decent person would just go, how are your neighbors? Do you go talk to them? Do you know what's happened, or why we lost a light, or where can we get water, or can we share food? Do you have a gun I can borrow? Right? Nothing. It's like this extreme individualism that I think is kind of very representative of what's worse. Not what's worse about American culture, but also that these so-called artists imbibe it, that they don't critique it, that they don't offer alternatives. I mean, really, I do think that in that sense, it's kind of a very Trumpist film. Yeah, even though, and maybe now to contradict myself, because of course, in a Trumpist film, you wouldn't have Anne Hathaway as the heroine, which she so clearly is. Yeah, I mean, the film is really driven by Hathaway.
Yeah, I think the thing is that it's a film that is so embedded in its current culture that it doesn't even see alternatives. It just reproduces it. So you say right at the end, when you do get on the news the people saying such and so saved me, it's the neighbour, it's the librarian, as you say, that comes across as a complete afterthought of a scene. We're just seeing them on the news saying, oh, I'm fine, and this thing about she went back and saved everybody, fine, but that's not the heart of the film. The heart of the film is we saved the dad and got him back, and the family's back together, and that's the only important thing.
Exactly.
And that
it's almost like they realized how ugly that was and then filmed the other people.
So. Yeah. But ultimately the heart of the film is my family okay? And so that final shot that we're left on is the two families, because the girl they took in because she lost her parents has got her parents back, as we say. The two families are together. How lovely! But it's not a society that's back together. It's families that have been reunited. The family unit is what counts.
I think it's one of those. It's interesting what you said. If you were a 12-year-old boy watching this on TV, because actually I do think that it's one of those films that is going to live on in TV, and that will always be kind of fun to watch, and that you don't think about very seriously, and it's not very good, and it's certainly not illuminating in any way. There's not an ounce of art in it, but Anne Hathaway's very interesting to look at, really. She's quite good, and the film does perform those scares in a very non-threatening manner, right? Yeah. So it'll live on in TV.
And it has a surprising degree of violence. We see that woman getting towards the start, which is what surprises you into going, oh, this is more violent than I thought it would be. We almost see the neighbour get killed. The camera goes behind a plank of wood and obscures it, and I'm like, show me the neighbour dying. But we do see some things. We see the old neighbour, the editor, on the floor, covered in blood, having been attacked. There's a gun there, So, and there's an F-bomb towards the end.
There are bodies that the birds keep picking at, the flying birds.
So there are these things where, like, there's, to a degree it's cartoony, to a degree there's a degree of realism to it. And the scene with the dinosaurs fucking, I'm like, well, this is where I actually don't know where the audience is, because if this is aimed at that, like I say, that 8 to 12 kid audience, that scene shouldn't be in it. It's funny and it's jokey, and a joke is made of it.
I think the expectation
is
that
like
maybe
too explicit for a young audience.
I think the expectation is that a 12-year-old wouldn't know what's happening.
Maybe so, but they basically, anyway, who knows? Like maybe, but I think there is something that's a little bit. Maybe kids are just older these days. I don't think so though. That feels a little bit misjudged for the age range that I think the film is aiming for.
Yes.
But
I think you might be wrong about the age range. I think it might be aimed more at a 16-year-old. Maybe
so, but then, like I said, I think I'm not watching this. I think as a 16-year-old. With the thing is, when I think about those films that I'm referring to, I'm thinking about films like The Pagemaster and Three Ninjas, which you will never have heard of.
Yeah.
Three Ninjas is basically a kind of Karate Kid / Home Alone ripoff. Very cheaply made, about three brothers who are good at karate, and their house is like invaded. So there's your Home Alone bit, and they go to fight bad guys, which is your Karate Kid bit, and it's super derivative. I saw it as a kid a lot, and we had it on video, and I remember it very fondly. Doesn't make it a good film, but that's I'm thinking about.
I get those.
I'm thinking about kind of how old I was when I watched that. The Pagemaster is a Macaulay Culkin film about a kid who is kind of bullied and very nerdy, and loves books, and he ends up getting transported into the world of literature, literally. So it's this cartoon versions of books. So he's got like horror and adventure and something else, and there are these books with like faces that he befriends, and they take him through kind of Moby Dick and Dracula and stuff, and he has to survive all of these things that happen in classic literature. And then he gets back into the real world and he's developed as a person. I really love that film. I think it probably does actually stand up in some ways, but it's a film that is for a specific audience of a specific age, that is delivering certain morals and messages and excitements. And I think this is kind of where that fits. It's just that it's also cost $80 to $90 million and it's too big for that, you know?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that it is aimed at 12-year-olds, like you say. I think it's an older audience. I do think it's more like 16, because isn't there something about the two girls that is meant to be lesbian-y?
Well, it's definitely meant to, the kid fancies the new girl, and they have that, it's a pretty tropey scene of, the group of boys hide behind the fence and look at her, and they all fancy her and stuff. And then there is a moment between the new girl and the older sister, where you get an inkling that that will be, they're in the bedroom having saved her, and you get an inkling that will be the relationship that matters, and you see it on the boy's face and you're thinking, poor kid, he's barking up the wrong tree.
Exactly. So the film has all those elements that don't sit easily in a film aimed at 12-year-olds, really.
Maybe, but that's not a sexual scene, it's a scene
of
romantic interest or whatever.
I know, but
yeah,
I think it's a thing that would appeal to, I don't know, like an audience of 16-year-olds. It's just, it brings out some inklings. And also the thing about, parents being divorced and kids finding themselves. And I think it even ends with one of them going to university. And
you're right. It definitely does have a young adult set of themes going on it.
So,
but to me that is at odds with the other things the film is doing, which I think aim a bit younger.
Maybe.
I just feel like the young adult audience that will respond to those themes that you describe will not respond to certain other things.
Anyway,
will not be impressed.
What's clear is that this film does not address a sophisticated connoisseur of cinema.
Well, there is that.
Yeah. So
I wonder what that woman, Emily, what's her name? The Odyssey translator. I wonder what she'll have to say about it.
Yeah.
She's the film critic du jour.
Anyway, so let's wrap up, because, again, so this is a film that's kind of so unsatisfying in so many ways. And yet, I think, again, maybe what we haven't talked about enough is really that in spite of all of these failings, which are very considerable, I really liked watching it.
Yeah, I expected to come out against it more than I have. I did think it was very mediocre stuff, extremely derivative, and not in necessarily forgivable ways. Sometimes I do want it to be showing a bit more imagination than it is.
Sure.
But it is also a film that works. The things that are meant to scare you. The way it builds up tension works. It does have things to recommend it. And I think it's a film that kids will enjoy, and I think it's meant for them.
All right, so thank you very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and YouTube Music. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and Instagram at Eavesdropping at the Movies, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.